From the moment we wake up in the morning to the quiet hours of the night, God is with us. His presence is not limited to the moments we call on Him, nor is it confined to places of worship. He walks with us in every step, in every challenge, and in every triumph. Whether we feel strong and confident or weak and uncertain, His presence remains unwavering. He is not a distant observer, but an ever-present guide, walking beside us through every season of life. There are times when life feels light, when everything seems to align perfectly, and we feel surrounded by blessings. In those moments, it is easy to recognize God's presence. We feel His goodness in the laughter of loved ones, in the opportunities that unfold, and in the peace that fills our hearts. But God does not only walk with us in times of joy, He is just as present in moments of struggle. And when we are faced with trials, when the path ahead is unclear, and when our hearts are burdened with worry, He is there, walking beside us, offering strength we may not even realize we have. It is human nature to doubt when hardships arise, when prayers seem unanswered, when pain lingers longer than we expect, or when life takes an unexpected turn. We may wonder if God has stepped away. But the truth is, He never leaves us. Even when we cannot see Him at work, He is orchestrating things for our good. He is the quiet reassurance in our hearts, the unexpected act of kindness from another, the peace that surpasses understanding. Every step we take, He is walking ahead of us, preparing the way, walking beside us, giving us courage, and walking behind us, protecting us from what we cannot see. The Bible is filled with promises of His presence. He walked with Moses through the wilderness, with David through battles, with the disciples in the storms, and with countless others who faced trials, yet never walked alone. And just as He walked with them, He walks with us today. No matter what we face, we can take comfort in knowing that God walks with us. We do not journey through life alone. His love, His guidance, and His strength go with us every step of the way. Life is filled with moments of uncertainty, times when we stand at a crossroads and fear threatens to take hold. The unknown can be overwhelming, and challenges may arise that shake our confidence. In those moments, fear whispers that we are not strong enough, that we do not have what it takes, and that we are alone in our struggles. But fear is not the voice of truth. God is. And when we choose faith over fear, we step into the assurance that He is walking with us, guiding our steps, and making a way even when we cannot see it. Faith does not mean we will never face fear. It means that in the face of fear, we choose to trust that God is greater. We see this time and time again in the Bible. When the Israelites stood before the Red Sea with the enemy closing in, fear told them there was no way forward. But faith led them to trust God, and the waters parted. When David faced Goliath, fear said he was too small and too weak, but faith told him that God's power was greater than any giant. When Peter stepped out of the boat to walk on water, fear told him he would sink, but faith allowed him to take that step toward Jesus. Fear will always try to keep us from moving forward. It will make us question if we are capable, if we are worthy, if we are truly protected. But God does not call us to live in fear. He calls us to walk in faith. He does not promise that we will never face challenges, but He does promise that we will never face them alone. Fear looks at the size of the problem. Faith looks at the size of our God. Fear sees obstacles. Faith sees opportunities. Fear says we are alone. Faith reminds us that God walks with us. When we trust in Him, fear loses its power. Even in difficult times, even when the outcome is uncertain, we can move forward with confidence, knowing that God is in control. He is our refuge, our strength, and our ever-present help. And when we walk in faith, we walk in the certainty that no matter what lies ahead, God is already there, leading the way. Life does not always go as planned. There are moments of joy and success, but there are also times of hardship, disappointment, and uncertainty. It is in these difficult seasons that we may wonder why we must go through struggles, why certain doors close, or why prayers seem unanswered. But even in our trials, God walks with us, not to burden us, but to strengthen us, to teach us, and to draw us closer to Him. Challenges are not meant to break us, they are meant to shape us. Just as gold is refined in fire, our faith is tested and strengthened through trials. When we face struggles, it is easy to focus on the pain and forget the purpose. But every trial carries a lesson, and every difficulty is an opportunity to grow. We see this truth reflected throughout the Bible. Joseph was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, and imprisoned for years, yet God was preparing him for a greater purpose. What seemed like a season of suffering was actually a time of preparation for the incredible plan God had for him. When the time was right, Joseph was placed in a position of power, and he understood that everything he had endured was part of God's greater plan. Likewise, when we go through trials, we may not always understand why, but we can trust that God is working through them. He is teaching us patience when things do not happen in our timing. He is teaching us perseverance when the road is difficult. He is teaching us faith when we cannot see the outcome. Every challenge we face is an opportunity to rely on Him more fully, to grow stronger in our faith, and to become the people He has called us to be. Even in the hardest moments, we are never alone. God does not abandon us in our struggles. He walks with us through them. He gives us the strength to endure, the wisdom to learn, and the faith to keep going. And when we look back, we often see that the moments we thought would break us were actually the moments that made us stronger. No trial is wasted when God is in control. Through every storm, He is shaping us for something greater. God is always speaking to us, guiding us, and reminding us that we are never alone. But in the busyness of life, it can be easy to overlook His presence. We often look for dramatic signs or grand miracles, expecting to hear His voice in loud and obvious ways. Yet more often than not, God speaks in gentle whispers, in small moments, and in unexpected ways. If we open our hearts and pay attention, we will begin to see that He is constantly reassuring us of His presence. God's guidance comes in many forms. Sometimes He speaks through His Word. When we read the Bible, we find the wisdom, encouragement, and direction we need. A verse we come across at just the right time may be God reminding us that He sees our struggles and is leading us through them. Other times, He speaks through people, a friend's kind words, an unexpected conversation, or a sermon that touches our heart. These can all be ways that God reassures us that He is near. And God also speaks through circumstances. When doors close, it may not be rejection, but redirection. When opportunities arise unexpectedly, they may be His way of leading us towards something greater. What may seem like coincidences are often divine interventions, moments carefully orchestrated by God to remind us that He is guiding our path. But hearing God's voice requires us to be still and listen. In the noise of daily life, it is easy to become so focused on our worries that we miss His presence. Yet, when we take time to pray, to reflect, and to seek Him, we begin to recognize the ways He is speaking to us. Even in silence, God is working. Even when we do not understand His plan, He is leading us. God does not leave us to figure out life on our own. He is constantly showing us that He walks with us, speaking through His Word, through people, through circumstances, and through the quiet moments where His peace fills our hearts. If we trust Him and remain open to His guidance, we will see that He is always near, always leading, and always reminding us that we are never alone. Walking with God is not just about believing in His presence. It is about choosing to follow His path. God calls us to walk in obedience, to trust His guidance, and to live according to His will. But obedience is not always easy. Sometimes his path requires us to step out of our comfort zones, to surrender our own plans, and to trust him even when we do not fully understand where he is leading us. Yet, when we walk in obedience, we experience the fullness of his blessings, his peace, and his purpose for our lives. Obedience is not about following a set of rules. It is about building a relationship with God, listening to his voice, and choosing to walk in his ways. The Bible is filled with examples of those who walked in obedience and saw God's hand move in their lives. Abraham obeyed when God called him to leave his home and go to an unknown land, and because of his faith, he became the father of many nations. Noah obeyed when God told him to build an ark, even though there was no sign of rain, and his obedience saved his family. The disciples obeyed when Jesus called them to leave everything behind and follow him, and they witnessed miracles and played a part in spreading the gospel to the world. But obedience is not just for the heroes of faith. It is for us today. Every day we are given opportunities to follow God's leading, whether in the small choices we make or in the bigger decisions that shape our lives. It may be forgiving someone who has wronged us, stepping out in faith to pursue a calling, or simply trusting God's timing instead of forcing our own plans. Whatever it may be, obedience requires faith. God does not call us to obedience to restrict us, but to lead us into something greater. His plans for us are always higher than our own. And when we choose to walk in his ways, we align ourselves with his purpose. Even when obedience is difficult, even when it requires patience and sacrifice, we can trust that God's path is always the best path. And as we walk in obedience, we walk closer to him, experiencing the fullness of his presence every step of the way. Life is a journey filled with twists and turns, highs and lows, moments of clarity and times of uncertainty. At times, the path is smooth and we feel confident in where we are going. Other times, the road is difficult and we may struggle to see what lies ahead. But no matter where we are on this journey, one truth remains. God is with us, and with him, there is always hope. Hope is not just wishful thinking. It is the deep assurance that no matter what we face, God is in control. It is knowing that even when the road is tough, we are not walking it alone. When challenges arise, when prayers seem unanswered, when life does not go as expected, hope reminds us that God is still working. He has not forgotten us, and he has not abandoned us. He is leading us, strengthening us, and preparing us for what is ahead. We see this promise throughout the Bible. When the Israelites wandered in the wilderness, God provided for them daily, leading them to the promised land. When Paul faced imprisonment and hardship, he still rejoiced because he knew that God's purpose was greater than his circumstances. When Jesus' followers mourned his death, they thought all hope was lost. But 3 days later, he rose again, proving that even in the darkest moments, God brings light and victory. Hope does not mean we will never face difficulties, but it does mean that difficulties do not have the final say. God's plans for us are good, and he is always working for our benefit, even when we do not understand how. When we trust in him, we can face challenges with confidence, knowing that he will make a way. No matter what we are going through, we can hold on to the hope that God provides. His love never fades, his promises never fail, and his presence never leaves us. Even in the hardest moments, even when we feel weak or uncertain, we can keep walking forward because we are not alone. With God by our side, there is always hope, always strength, and always a reason to keep moving forward.